Hello, my name's Christopher Herbert. I work in the education industry here in Vancouver. I graduated from Thompson Rivers University with a bachelor's and an education certificate. I have then been in education for about 10 years, currently working as a director at a private college here in Vancouver, British Columbia. A lot of our students are business students from all over the world. We also do hospitality and customer service as well. Recently, I also became a mortgage broker working with Lions Bureau Mortgages.
So why did you also take up being a mortgage broker, additional to being the director of this private college?
Recently, I also became a mortgage broker, getting licensed from UBC and working with Lions Bureau Mortgages. Being a mortgage broker was an exciting challenge for me because I had to build connections with various people and work on the networking end of things, which is something I did not have to do with the director position at the school. So that has been an exciting challenge. I also teach IELTS on the side and have a small IELTS business where I meet with various students and help them prepare for a very important test for education and immigration purposes. Today, I'm sitting down with Novantum to discuss the challenges that many students face and the opportunities that the Novantum education structure can provide to students that traditional education methods typically would not be able to touch on.
From your perspective as an educator, what's missing most in business school programs today?
As somebody who has worked in education for quite a long time and somebody who has been in charge of a business program, I think one of the main issues that I find with business programs is there is a gap between theory and execution. Traditional business programs, they teach students about business, but not really how. So when students leave these programs, they know a lot about business, a lot of different concepts, but they don't really understand how to properly apply that into the real world. So there is this gap between actually being able to take what you learn and to start a business.
When you started your own business, I know you work and have your own IELTS program, as well as you started becoming a mortgage broker. What are some of the challenges that you faced?
I think for me, one of the main challenges when it came to starting both the mortgage broker and the IELTS business was the networking end of things. Learning or trying to figure out what other people are looking for, what they want, and how to sell the product. And then there's the other aspects of business, such as marketing, bookkeeping, stuff like that, can be very difficult for new entrepreneurs as well.
And why do you think learning by building a real business is more effective than for long-term success than exams or theoretical case studies?
With case studies, oftentimes students can be disconnected from the material. However, when you're actually starting a business and directly applying what you learned in class into the real world, it helps a lesson stick. You get this emotional connection to it and an emotional connection to what you're actually learning because you're out there in the real world applying those skills. And so I think that it's much better to approach something like that than just learning it in school. For traditional business programs, what you're doing is you're memorizing things for tests, but when you're actually applying that, you're way more likely to understand it and to grasp it and remember it.
I watched this thing a few years back. It was this professor in the States talking about long-term memory and when we learn something, how we can better. This was mostly I was taking a psychology course. This is kind of off track a little bit. But he was talking about how when you learn something theoretical in school, a lot of the times, the best way to understand that concept and take it from going into your short-term memory to your long-term memory is actually taking what you learned and teaching it to someone else. So that way you prolong it, you can teach it, and that way you can apply it a little bit better. So that's why a program like this, when you're studying the theoretical part of it, but it's so you can apply it day to day into your business. You're teaching it to your fellow classmates and they're teaching it back to you, and then you're applying it into your work. So it just sticks a little bit better because you're seeing the results in day-to-day actions. So that's what I really appreciate about the program as well.
I love that you bring that up actually, because that was one of the study methods that I would use in college. Is me and my friends would explain concepts to each other, and we found that It makes it so much easier to grasp and remember those concepts if you're actually able to teach somebody else it. And I think it's the same thing when you're having to apply what you learned into starting an actual business. Your brain is working to understand it in a more practical way, and that makes it a lot easier to remember.
Absolutely. Jumping back in, what is the benefits of a team-based entrepreneurship and how does it contribute to a new business success?
I think one of the main benefits of that is that it forces your students to navigate different perspectives and different management styles. No matter how you start a business, whether you do it as a sole proprietorship or a partnership, you're still going to have to work with other people and navigate those complex relationships. And so I think that is a benefit of having people working together from the start, is they can build on those skills. Even something like conflict management, that can be difficult for people to adequately approach, right? And so when you're building something together and working on those small points of conflict and finding a way to resolve it, that can even help you when it comes to sales or dealing with an upset customer or something like that. It's very valuable skill sets to have.
What do you find unique about the Novantum's approach to experiential learning and real-world entrepreneurship?
As I said earlier, I think that the Novantum program kind of bridges that gap between theory and the practical end of things. When a student leaves the program, they're going to know that they have equity in a business that they helped to create. And I think that's an amazing motivator for the students as well. Not just like chasing a letter grade, you're actually chasing something that is out there in the real world that you will directly benefit from. And I think that's a very unique feature of Novantum and something that students will benefit greatly, not only from a professional standpoint, but from an educational standpoint as well.
I couldn't agree more with you. That actually was the one thing that attracted me to this program and I've spoken to a few people who've had their own businesses and just talking about how this could have benefited them when they first started going into their catering business or their cleaning business, and how that kind of looked for them, looking at the math of it, looking at the research being done of how much these service-based industries actually make, and that in your second year you are guaranteed to make the lowest amount is actually $60K. So are you as a student guaranteed to get that money for tuition that you're paying back tenfold? And you are doing it on your own and you see your money grow, but also you're not being graded on a paper, you're being graded on the revenue that you put into place and you bring into your own company.
Just to like touch on AI and stuff, I see it as the director at the college. Education needs to change because of things like AI. And even if you're a good student, students are going to start relying on AI to help them with assignments and stuff. So they're not going to grasp the concepts as well. And also, in terms of measuring success, giving a letter grade is becoming very difficult now because you have so many tools to help students, right? So I think education needs to become more practical, which is what Novantum is doing.
Exactly. And I remember when I was teaching, I told you, one of the students was opening up his own catering business on the side and doing a food truck situation. And I remember telling you about the student that's laughing about it, and then telling you about the number of students that were using AI in the classroom and how I would just be like, okay, you're done, sir, or you're failed. And I've just preached that so many times to students that AI is a tool and not a replacement of your brain, because what we're finding now is that success is measured by how proficient you are in using these AI tools. But then if you ask that person certain questions that are based on experience and practical knowledge, they have no idea. If you're a millennial or if you're a boomer or a Gen X or whatever, you're probably a lot smarter and have a better know-how than students that are they're just getting started in either high school or in their early 20s. They just don't have that drive, I think, to learn because something is there to make life easier for them.
It's going to continue to increase as a problem. And I do think that educational institutions need to adapt with the changing technologies, as any other industry does, right? I think sometimes with education, we can kind of fall fall back on traditional ways of doing things, but I don't think that works anymore, not in this world. Students love these tools like AI, but they don't always understand that it's actually hurting them.
What role does mentorship play in the kind of transformation Novantum is aiming for, in your opinion?
I think that a huge benefit of mentorship is that you get real-time feedback and very specific help with solutions that you won't get starting a business the traditional way, right? And I think that's actually a huge benefit. If you take a business program at UBC and then you start a business, you're on your own for that business. What is it, like 60% of new businesses fail after 5 years? If you have something like a mentor helping guide you through that very difficult transition period of getting a business to be functional and successful, that's a huge benefit to these young entrepreneurs and students.
Absolutely. And I do find that when you're in universities, you only get access to those mentorships if you grind and you get into a master's program. And then from there, it's still, you're not a priority. It's still the PhD students who get full access to the university profs and full access to work on what they're working on and help them with their research. And then you maybe get to help the PhD students. It's just a hierarchy. So you have to grind all the way until you're able to actually get that knowledge and work with the person to see how they got that knowledge than just from getting going into your bachelor's. And then you have to stand out in a crowd of people and you're just like a number. That's what I've always had a problem with, is being just a number. But when you have stakes in something, when you're part of something, that mentor wants you to thrive. And that prof wants you to thrive because they've invested not only their time, but also making sure that your business thrives because they're a part of it as well.
It goes beyond just education at that point. And I think that's a very beneficial thing. Yes, I absolutely endorse a program like Novantum for various reasons that we kind of touched on. The first is the education industry needs to change. And I think a program like this, where it's more hands-on, is actually touching the points where students will need help on. And I also think from the student perspective, a way more valuable system where they're actually getting that mentorship, they're getting that real-time advice, and they're actually getting help on creating a business. They're leaving the program with something that they helped create and that they have equity in. And I cannot think of any other program that offers something like that. And I think that's a huge advantage.